Well, there was an important Supreme Court decision out of the US 2 weeks ago, and if you read the mainstream media, it would have been something like businesses can refuse to serve LGBTQIA plus customers, like this one from One News. But is that what the ruling actually says? Well, let's check it out. So in a 6-3 majority decision, the Supreme Court held that the government cannot force you to say or produce something that violates your religious beliefs. That sounds like a superb decision, and it is. Laurie Smith, she runs a website and graphic design company, and she wanted to start creating custom wedding websites, but she was hesitant because she lives in Colorado. And not only is it cannabis central, but you may have already heard about Jack the baker, who refused to make a same-sex wedding cake or a gender transition celebration cake and paid the price.
Colorado is misusing its public accommodation law to censor speech. They've really engaged in a pattern and practice of this unlawful behavior as they went after Jack Phillips for many years, misusing it against him to try to compel him to create messages that go against his convictions. And now they're threatening to use the same law to force Laurie to violate her beliefs.
Jack Phillips is the owner of Masterpiece Cake Shop. He has been targeted by Colorado officials for almost 8 years now.
Masterpiece Cake Shop, we serve everybody who comes into our store, but we can't express every message that people ask us to with our custom cakes. Masterpiece, the first part of it says master, and I knew that no man can serve two masters. That was from Jesus' Sermon on the Mount, and I wanted this to be a place where I would serve him, and in my art and in my life, and the way I treated customers and the way I treated my employees. The first case started when two gentlemen came in and asked me to create a cake that would celebrate a same-sex wedding. So when I told them that I would create other custom work for them, or they were welcome in my shop and I would sell them anything else, they turned around and sued me through the Colorado state government. That case wound its way through the courts and to the US Supreme Court, where we had a 7-2 decision in our favor.
Jack Phillip has been in litigation now for over a decade, which is really unfathomable to have to endure that for that long, where Colorado and its law have been used to target and to harass him because he has a belief about marriage that Colorado doesn't like.
It has not really taken a toll on me. It's helped build my spiritual faith. It's helped tie our family closer together. I've gained a lot of good friends through all of this. I don't know that I would choose to do it again, but God chose this for us. I didn't choose to do this. I hope that when the Supreme Court rules, if the ruling comes down, that I'm hoping for anyway, that they'll understand that they can't take away Americans' free speech, Coloradans' free speech, and they can't punish people for living according to their faith.
Yeah, so Jack's obviously hoping that Laurie's case did win, and it's interesting, they talk about 10 years. That's exactly how long Family First was fighting the government against deregistration, and also ended up in our Supreme Court. But anyway, back to the US, that's why Laurie felt she needed to find out whether she was also protected. And let me quote the Heritage Foundation, who sums up the Supreme Court case. They say, Laurie does business with all people, regardless of their sexual orientation. What she will not do is use her creative talents to express a message that contradicts her personal beliefs, no matter who they are. She won't encourage violence or demean another person or promote atheism. She won't serve a white skinhead who wants to create a racist website. Why should she be forced to create a website that promotes pornography or a brothel? The line she draws has nothing to do with the customer, but with what the customer wants Laurie to express in a website or graphic design. It's about freedom of speech and nothing else. And, we must always fight a government from compelling people to speak its own preferred messages. And the US Supreme Court agreed. And here's what the lawyers representing Laurie said after the decision, and the lawyer makes some very good comparisons. Have a watch.
Today, after enduring 7 years of government censorship, the United States Supreme Court ruled in Laurie's favor and upheld free speech. The court held that the First Amendment prevents Colorado from forcing Laurie to say a government message that she doesn't believe, and that the government cannot misuse the law to eliminate ideas it dislikes from the public square. The Supreme Court agreed that Laurie works with everyone, including those who identify as LGBT, and her decisions to create speech always turn on what the message is, not who requests it. Lori is now free to speak and to create consistent with the core of who she is. This is a landmark victory for all Americans, regardless of one's beliefs. As the court today noted, it has long held that the opportunity to think for ourselves and to express those thoughts freely is among our most cherished liberties and part of what keeps our republic strong. The government should no more force Lori to speak against her beliefs about marriage than an LGBT website designer to speak contrary to her beliefs. Neither should a Muslim cake artist be forced to create a custom cake with a message criticizing Islam. A pro-abortion filmmaker should not have to make a documentary that advances or promotes the pro-life movement. And a Democratic speechwriter certainly shouldn't have to write a speech promoting a Republican candidate. People like Lori, who believe that marriage is a unique relationship between a husband and a wife, should not be bullied, persecuted, or banished from the public square for peacefully living and speaking out that belief. A belief that is held by millions of people from all walks of life, all races, diverse faith traditions, and no faith at all. Even people who reject Lori's beliefs about marriage should stand with her, because they too might be the ones who face censorship when political or cultural winds shift.
Yep, well said. And here was the response of Laurie to the ruling.
My name is Lori Smith, and I'm a graphic and website designer. I own 303 Creative in Denver, Colorado. Today, I am incredibly grateful for the U.S. Supreme Court's ruling today that says that I'm free to create custom designs consistent with my beliefs without the fear of Colorado punishing me. This is a victory not just for me, but for all of us. Whether you share my beliefs or completely disagree with them, free speech is for everyone. The government should not force anyone to say something we don't believe. And the court's decision means that we are all more free today than we were yesterday. We can think, create, imagine, and speak consistent with the core of who we are. Years ago, I left the corporate design world to start my own art studio because I wanted to promote causes that are close to my heart. I love creating custom artwork for overseas missions, homeless ministries, animal rescue shelters, and organizations for veterans who have selflessly sacrificed to defend our country. I love people, and I create custom artwork for everyone, including those who identify as LGBT. For me, it's never about the who, it's about the what. When considering a potential project, I always look at the message being requested, never the person requesting it. My canvas is on paper, sometimes pixels, and I cherish the freedom to craft messages and celebrate things that I'm passionate about. I was excited to expand my portfolio to design custom wedding websites celebrating marriage between a husband and a wife. But the state of Colorado told me that I couldn't speak consistent with my beliefs, and I had to create custom artwork that conflicts with the core of who I am. Colorado wanted to punish me for my speech, even though it agreed that I, like most artists, always choose my projects based on the message, never the person requesting the message. So I stood for freedom, and I challenged Colorado's injustice. It has been a long and difficult 7-year journey, one where I've had to face harassment, constant hacking attempts, and even death threats. But the Supreme Court's ruling today corrects that injustice. Excuse me. This is a victory for all Americans across our great country, whether you share my beliefs or hold different beliefs, whether you're an LGBT graphic designer, a Jewish calligrapher, a Democrat speechwriter, or a pro-life photographer. The government shouldn't force anyone to say something they don't believe. I know that if we want freedom for ourselves, we must defend it for others. This belief and my faith have inspired me to persevere over these last several years. We will not always agree with one another, and that's okay. But civility and respect for one another is necessary for a peaceful society.
Yeah, well, that was some excerpts from the Full Media Conference. And both Laurie and Jack have paid a huge price to make a stand. And we need to stand with them but it's why the headlines about this case and similar ones involving wedding vendors and cake makers, photographers and florists are all wrong. President Joe Biden said in a statement about this ruling that it was disappointing and said it weakens long-standing laws that protect all Americans against discrimination in public accommodations, end quote. But if Laurie declines to do business, and Jack, and you, with someone, it is because of the message that the person wants her to convey, not the characteristics that the purchaser possesses. Now, Justice Neil Gorsuch, who wrote the majority opinion on behalf of the majority 6 judges, said, quote, "Can a state force someone who provides her own expressive services to abandon her conscience and speak the state's preferred message instead?" End quote. And in his view, what the dissenting 3 judges were arguing for was for the court to allow the government to force an individual to speak contrary to her beliefs on a significant issue of personal conviction. And this is clearly a violation of our most fundamental rights. And Professor Jonathan Turley described the Supreme Court decision as an amazing moment in history. He rightly pointed out that the decision had nothing to do with discrimination, since Laurie freely served a wide range of customers, including those who identified as LGBTQ. But Turley noted cases such as these don't change the public accommodation laws. You cannot be refused to go into a store and buy items that are pre-made, for example, based on your race or your status. But if someone wants to compel you to create something contrary to your convictions, the state cannot compel you to do so. But this is what the Colorado law was trying to do. Remember this next time you see a hysterical and false headline from our mainstream media about this case. A well-known commentator, Dr. Michael Brown, said, "Here's some questions you should ask anybody who's criticizing the decision. Should a gay web designer be compelled by the state to design a website for a counseling service that helps people overcome same-sex attractions? Should an Orthodox Jewish web designer be compelled by the state to design a website for Jews for Jesus? Should an atheist web designer be compelled by the state to design a website called Answering Atheism? Should a trans-identified web designer be compelled by the state to design a website on the dangers of hormone therapy and sex change surgery? Should a Muslim web designer be compelled by the state to design a website for a meat service specializing in pork products? Should a Christian web designer be compelled by the state to design an adultery hookup website? Should any web designer be compelled by the state to design a pornography website? The answer to all those questions is obvious. None of these people should be compelled to create content that violates their beliefs or convictions. The state has no right to compel them to do so. The Supreme Court decision was another good day for freedom and faith and conscience. And that's why the mainstream media don't like it.